Merry Christmas is the 8th episode of the 8th season of Frasier. This is directed by Pamela Fryman, and as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. And it's a really decent episode. I always quite like the Christmas ones. Starts off down at KCL. Frasier wants to be co-host for the parade in Seattle, and Dr. Mary, played by Kim Coles, comes in to give them, Frasier and Roz, copies of her book, and Frasier's not very happy because she's still calling herself Dr. Mary, even though she's not a doctor. She doesn't have the certification. She's not really meant to use that name. And we're then at the apartment. Niles comes over. The house is gorgeous. There are decorations everywhere. They always do such a great job of decorating mostly Frasier's apartment for Christmas. And we learn that Kelly is coming over. Kelly is the current host of the parade, and Frasier is obviously hoping to co-host with her. Then Niles and Daphne have some discussion about their dinner plans, and then we also get some more comments about Daphne and food, and I know what they're doing, and yes, they're gradually building up to something that happens later on, and I'll talk about that more when we get there, but I really don't like it. It's really irritating and just not a great decision, but again, more on that when we get there. And then Martin comes in with Eddie, which is just a lovely moment. I always love seeing Eddie. And then Kelly arrives. She's played by Bess Armstrong, and Frasier basically insists on auditioning for her right there, and we get a couple of minutes of this, and it goes really well, and we cut to KCL with Frasier announcing that he got the gig. So that worked well for Frasier. And then Kenny comes in pretty much immediately and tells Frasier that Kelly has food poisoning, with a strong hint that maybe Dr. Mary could be Frasier's co-host instead. And needless to say, Frasier's not that enthusiastic about this. I will say I really like Dr. Mary. I don't like the fact that she's calling herself doctor if she doesn't have the credentials to do that, but I do like the character. I think she's really great fun. I think she has a really great, infectious, lively personality, and she's somebody I'd want to be in a room with. I think her happiness would rub off on other people. Maybe not on Frasier. Maybe it doesn't work on Frasier, but certainly I really, really like the character. We then see Daphne, Niles, and Martin at the apartment, and they decide to open one gift each, because they give Martin a gift. It's just a 6-pack of beer, and they are encouraged by Martin to open one gift each as well. And then they open another. And, well, we'll come back to that in a moment. We then cut to Frasier and Dr. Mary hosting the parade. I think the pacing is great here. They didn't drag it out. Frasier got the gig. He got the bad news. And then we're at the parade. We find out who his co-host is. I think everything was developed really well. Everything flowed really well. And we see him and Dr. Mary hosting. I like how it's framed. We're focusing mostly on them in the main frame. And Frasier wants to stick to the script, understandably. And Mary is ad-libbing, which goes down well with everybody but Frasier. Meanwhile, as we see at the apartment, everybody is opening all of the gifts. And it's absolute chaos. I was going to describe the scene. I won't spoil it. I know I said spoilers, but I won't describe this one moment. It's not integral to this review, other than the fact that it's just chaos. And Daphne's wearing something that's just so unexpected. It's crazy. And I think they did such a good job with it. It looks fantastic. And then Frasier, back at the parade, wants to interview Santa. He's looking forward to this, and Santa comes along. But Santa is more interested in speaking with Dr. Mary. And it just all slips away from Frasier. This is not what he envisioned. This is not what he wanted. He is not in control. And it's difficult for me to work out whether he's more annoyed that Dr. Mary is his co-host because he doesn't love the way she does things, or he's more annoyed that he's not in control of the situation. Because he wouldn't be in control if Kelly was doing it with him as planned. And I don't think he would be as annoyed there. So I think it's maybe a bit of both. If he'd been able to interview Santa, even if Dr. Mary was involved, I think he would have been okay. I think it's a combination of him not being in control and also having to do this with a co-host he didn't want to co-host with. So it's just not a great time for Frasier. But he ultimately, to his credit, apologises for treating Mary the way he did. And that's certainly in Frasier's favour, so well done to him. And then at the very end, Peter Haskell as Bob Vernon comes along and meets Frasier, and Frasier convinces Bob Vernon to read his script with him, and we get a bit of dialogue between them, and it's a nice moment. It's sweet. Frasier was clearly very happy. At least he got a nice moment in the end there. And then the final scene is everybody unwrapping Christmas gifts, and it's really sweet and heartwarming, but with a strong suggestion that they rewrapped the gifts. Niles, Daphne and Martin, they rewrapped the gifts incorrectly. They put the wrong labels on because the exchange is not necessarily going the way it should have done. It's a decent episode. It's definitely not my favourite Frasier Christmas episode, and honestly I think the only reason for that is that we don't spend as much time in the apartment. I love seeing it dressed for Christmas, but what we got was still brilliant. There are some great messages in here, some great takeaways, particularly with Frasier's behaviour and also his perspective as well, and the fact that he wanted things to go a certain way and the way he responded to that. For anybody who needs that kind of control, and I'm talking to myself here, I think there are some good takeaways here. I think Dr. Mary is a wonderful character, and it's just a shame that it took Frasier a long time to allow himself to see that side of her and apologise to her, because he had to realise that she was just being herself, and it wasn't her fault that things were not going Frasier's way. Well, maybe to some extent it was, but it wasn't his fault that Kelly got sick, that the producers liked her ad-libbing, that Santa Claus was more interested in her. So I think Frasier had a lot to learn there, and ultimately, it's a really enjoyable episode of Frasier.